do that now. And say officially welcome to our second long-term recovery committee meeting, August 18th. And I'm co-chair Kevin Bielmeyer, economic development director. Our co-chair Dan Colton, finance director, was unable to join us. He's in the middle of the audit. First thing I wanted to tell everybody is that we do have the site just as of today up on the town website. So there's a link to this. It's on southbury-ct.org /LTRC, so for long-term recovery committee. You don't have to actually remember that, because when you're on the town page, there's various spots where you see long-term recovery committee and you click on it, it would take you to this dedicated page. But the importance of having the page is it allows us to consolidate everything that we're talking about in one spot. That allows, again, anybody in the public that might want to see it, they could go to that page. There was an article in the News Times on the 13th. I don't know if anybody got a chance to see it, but did get mention of the long-term recovery committee in this article, because it was a reporter called and asked about it. So we talked about it a little bit in that, and it got in the news. But then the following day, on the 14th, a press release went out as well to various papers. Not exactly sure who picked it up yet. Do expect something, though, locally in the Voices at the very least on Wednesdays. I'll be looking for that. The other thing I wanted to mention on the side of communications is just is email working out for everyone as a best vehicle to communicate with each other regarding this committee. Yeah. So everybody's gotten those that have gone out so far. And there was a recap of the last meeting that I sent out. So we'll moving down to just meetings. We'll keep this at noon at 2 if it seems to be the best time. Again, trying for the lunch hour and trying for it to not take up an hour, but rather just be 30 minutes. So as I said, not everybody's joining us. Let's do a quick kind of, not necessary, there's only 4 of us here, so I was gonna say we do a roll call, but just to recap for those that have not previously seen who is on the committee, we do have Tim Baldwin, Emergency Management. He's not with us at the moment because he got tied into some new PPE relief efforts delivering. Joshua Smith, our Region 15 Superintendent, he is on this for education in the youth sector. The state just got him on a call at 11:30 right before this. I am letting in now. Justin Beatty Realtors is in the group. Dawn Russian Doty of Benet Enterprises. And of course, I think everybody else is here with the exception of Rob. So with that, before I move to anyone else, and I know I want to be cognizant of her time, and I know she just joined us, but she didn't get to be on the call last week. So I want to have Sarah introduce herself to the group, just say a few words about yourself, and we appreciate you serving on this. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, I am Sarah Blursch. I'm a 3rd-generation farmer in Southbury. My family owns Daffodil Hill Growers. We grow about 18 acres of produce. I also run the Southbury Farmers Market. Our farm does a lot retail and wholesale, so I am happy to be here. I'm sorry that I'm a little late. Tuesdays are a farmer's market day for us, so I yelled at my husband. He has to drive the forklift, and I came in. So,
okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, Sarah, because when we were talking about the best times and days, of course, didn't know this was one of those market days. I knew Thursdays were because, of course, it's Southbury Farmers Market.
Right. It's only really for another month, so I didn't. If Tuesdays works for everybody, so I can try and make it work for me. Because it really, the beginning of October is when most markets are done, with the exception of the weekend guys. So.
Gotcha. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and I'm sure you're receiving everything okay email wise as far as what we've sent out regarding the group, right?
Yes, yep. Tonight I will sit down and read it. We actually have had really spotty internet service since the storm, so
Yeah, we sort of started this whole thing right in the midst of another crisis, right, being the tropical storm. So that it was like a double. In fact, some of the info that went out as far as people interpreting what we were doing a little bit misrepresented what the long-term recoveries committee's charge was. And I think actually it was the COG that did this. Last week we had a member of the Naugatuck Valley COG on the call. And somehow the COG got a little confused and thought that the long-term recovery committee's uh, primary purpose or secondary purpose was to handle the aftermath of the tropical storm. So they they put out some messaging to that effect, and I didn't want to publicly correct it, by comments. So I don't know if they'll get around to changing it or not, or it's already in the past and nobody really cares. But in any case, there was a little bit of confusion about what we're doing here, which is of course focused on long-term recovery from COVID-19, which, as many people have been quick to tell me, we're still in the midst of it. So how are we recovering? And there was talk of whether to wait to do this until a little later, but as has happened, of course, that little later has gotten a little later. It's gotten a little later as this pervades and persists, and so rather than wait for that point and have more potential, let's call them casualties of this from the standpoint of impact, why not see if there's something we can do earlier rather than later. So with that, let me just open it up. Is anybody had the chance? This seems like it went in a blink from when we met last week. But has anybody had a chance to make any contact, get any intel that they want to share with us at this time? And if so, just unmute, wave your hand. You're still muted there. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I kind of sent an email out to all the clergy in town just to make them aware of this committee and the resource it could be, and get any information through me. And the only response I've gotten really is from Rabbi, who questioned the possibility: is there grant money involved for PPE for religious congregations? So that's just a question. He wasn't necessarily.
Okay, and then obviously with that question, he wouldn't ask it if he didn't think it was something that might be needed.
Yeah. Well, they're getting ready for the High Holy Days, so he's got the larger crowds. He's probably thinking about right now, but then ongoing as well, because they have a school there too. So,
what did he specify, or even just in your own congregation and experience, indicate what might be driving the need for those funds? Is it for supplies? Is it for?
It was for supplies, for PPE particularly. Again, we require that everybody come into one of our services has a mask on and things like that. Every once in a while, somebody shows up who doesn't have a mask, and so we got a whole load of them to respond to that. But that's by and large what I would perceive it as. You didn't get any more detailed than that.
Okay.
And there wasn't a big urgency. I think I had brought up the question, and he said, "Well, maybe you could ask him this."
Sure. Okay. All right. Good. Neil, you and I spoke a little bit earlier before this call. Maybe just a quick recap of what you shared with me earlier in terms of your feeling as far as Southbury goes, and where we're at, and if you see any unmet needs or ones coming down the pike. Oh, sorry, you're muted. Neil? You're muted, sorry.
Am I muted or unmuted?
Now you are unmuted.
Or as I like to say, am I masked or unmasked right now? Okay, so I'm unmasked.
You are
okay?
unmasked.
Unmasked. The Hopperog Health District serves 3 towns, Woodbury, Southbury, and Oxford. They're very similar towns demographically. They're in the region. They border each other, but they're similar, very similar. with some differences. It's all about COVID-19 right now. A lot of our other programs, we had a lot of programs with seniors, with fall prevention, diabetes management, chronic disease management, and we were working on some blood pressure. Everything kind of has gone by the wayside because we're so overwhelmed, and because of social distancing, we're not supposed to be showing people how to put on their blood pressure cuffs and run classroom instruction right now. So there's a lot of needs in that health area, especially with the senior citizens. But moving on to COVID, we are holding on is the only word I can say. We've been following this, doing public health education, getting out the weekly and daily stats, working with the nursing homes, working with the private medical community, and doing contact tracing. We're doing contact tracing right now. We're in the, we get the people from the state. Connecticut is in a very low transmission state right now. The state is running around 2 people per 100,000 per day. That is very low when you compare Connecticut to Florida or Arizona, California, and now a whole bunch of Midwestern states. And now we're getting pulled into these schools.
Neil, can you give me that stat again? Did you say 2 people per 100,000?
Per day.
Per day. 2 people per 100,000 per day.
That's about the rate for the state of Connecticut, give or take a half a person. It varies by county. So it's very, very low. And the number of positive new tests is also very, very low. So that's why Connecticut is engaging in opening up the schools, or partially, and you might hear that from the superintendent tomorrow. I don't think he's on this call, from Region 15. We're working with the 3 of them. So we have about 3 to 5 cases a week right now. It's very, very low. And in fact, we had a 10-month-old come in over the weekend, which is probably the lowest ever recorded in the state of Connecticut. We found out today, it turns out that 10-month-old is from Newtown. So we will turn that over to the Newtown Health Department. And that was about 10 days ago. So that's pretty astounding. It just shows what's going on. But the number of cases is very, very low. And Connecticut is really doing a good job. And so is this region. We thought way back at the beginning in March that places like Heritage Village and the Greens in Oxford with a lot of seniors would be deeply affected. They were not. They had some cases, they had some deaths, but it was very few. The seniors really knew how to take care of themselves and stay out of harm's way and follow the recommendations. On the other side of this coin, which we're in the middle of, is the COVID-19 mixed up with the escape from New York crowd. And my sanitarian Joe was in the office next to him. I literally have to pull him off the ceiling literally every day, including today. His workload is so extraordinary. He does most of our septic systems and our wells and our building additions, our new homes, our some complaints. It's just extraordinary workload. When you hear the national statistics that home building is closing in on record highs, number of mortgages is closing in on record highs, it's actually happening here also. We're seeing a lot of new home construction, a lot of building additions, a lot of pools, a lot of stuff going on in this district, in the construction area. It's incredible, actually. We have just last week, we had a subdivision up in Woodbury that basically was approved by us in 2002. They even put the road in, and it lay dormant for 18 years until last week. And now we got plans for 4 houses in that subdivision and more to come. It's unbelievable. So there is, I believe that areas like Southbury and the region are being affected by the escape from New York crowd.
Right.
Hard to measure exactly how much, but we see it everywhere.
So obviously, you know, the additional benefits of that, you know, are one thing, of course. But from what I'm hearing you say too, is because of the increased workload of the district health department due to all of this extra housing and building, which is, again, not a bad thing. However, you at the same time have increased responsibilities with regards to handling this pandemic, including what I think you just today we're hearing from the state regarding the involvement of the health district with
Yeah,
regard
they,
the
up to this
education
point,
side?
the state guidance documents with the schools reopening and the school plans in this region, including Region 15, kind of had us, you know, the school system will consult with the local health department with issues about possible cases and cases to ascertain. But today, they basically, the woman from the state health department on the big call today with the superintendents, basically said, as soon as you have a case or anything, just call your local health department, hand it over to them. So we're going to be doing contact tracing in schools and classrooms. This is like, really? Like all 20 kids, or maybe the whole school, maybe all 500 kids? I mean, how is this humanly actually possible? And so there's that's going to be a big issue with us as school is opening any day now, next week, the week after. So we're working with the 3 school systems, including Josh Smith, and encouraging them to get their own, I call it the I-team, investigation team, contact tracing team in-house. And they're taking it seriously, I think, now as they get closer. Like, they just can't dump everything on us. We just won't be able to handle it, real literally.
And the last thing I want to ask Neil is along those lines is since we're talking unmet needs, from your perspective or your health department, need more resources, right? I mean, it's safe to
We
say
could use another person right now. What we don't have the funding for one.
right, but not just
$200
resources,
million that the state got, or the state health department got for the COVID-19 response. They've given 2.4 million to local health out of a couple of $100 million, just so you understand what the support level is. In our case, it's $33,000 over a year.
right? All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Neil.
What's
Let me go to
President?
let me go to you there. Let me ask. It says I need to ask you to unmute, but I thought I just heard you. Or
No, that was-
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm hearing Sean. I'm seeing Tom wave. Okay, Sean, go right ahead.
No, I was just curious as to what is the holdup on the distribution of those resources from the federal government to to the state of Connecticut's health department? I mean, is 2% or whatever of how much they got all that they're doing, or is that just a temporal issue? They've been able to distribute that much now, and a lot more is coming. Yeah, it just seemed like an odd.
There's been about 3 rounds of funding coming to the state health department and the state of Connecticut. The initial emergency funding back in February and March, and then funding since then from 2 other bills that they passed. The state of Connecticut is getting quite a bit of money, but not much of it is going out of the state of Connecticut down to the local health department level. That's the way it works in Connecticut generally. The state gets a lot and gives a little bit out and keeps the rest, keeps it for themselves, because they have to manage the disease outbreak also. So they really haven't released a sufficient amount for the workload that they're giving us now with the contact tracing, and now contact tracing for 3 public school systems. Like, really? Okay, so that's how it works.
Interesting. Okay.
A small percentage comes out. Thank you.
Okay, Tom.
I have a question for Neil, and I'm speaking way over my head. You know your department much better than I do, but I do know that Southbury building department is finally starting to look at maybe doing some online permitting to help their workflows and maybe reduce some in-office visits. I don't know if that's anything that would help you, if it's something we've looked at, and if that is maybe funding that might be available in another pot, a technology pot. Again, I don't know how these funds are distributed, but if there's a workaround that maybe we can get you some assistance that way. Is that anything we've looked at yet for the department?
I understand that from what I hear anecdotally, is the town of Southbury is looking at some online systems. We participate in Woodbury uses a system called View Permit or Viewpoint. We participate in it. It's been a long struggle,
Mm.
grudgingly, but we now participate with it. It's been about a 2-year journey to get up and running with them. And there's pros and cons to these online systems. I
Yeah.
think I've had a discussion with Kevin about the cons. Okay. And if Southbury goes this route, and we are the health department for Southbury, along with Oxford and Woodbury, they better have a full-time viewpoint manager. That's all their job is, to manage the data flow,
Mhm.
because it will overwhelm these small suburban towns so quick they will not know what hit them, especially ones that are growing fast, like Southbury. There'll be so much stuff coming in, so much,
Yeah.
because anybody can go on and create a permit. So you can go in and, I want to build a 9-story building on Main Street South in Southbury. Now everybody's got to run around and address your building.
Gotcha.
More to come on that conversation. Because
Yep.
I'm in the throes of that, as Neil indicated.
Yep, I know.
Tom, did you want to say anything more before I toss it over to Sarah? I want to just ask her a question or two.
No, that was my only question for Neil.
Okay. Sarah, I'm just going to ask you to unmute if you would, and understanding that so far you haven't, sort of seen any of the things we've discussed or talked about to date. But what we're essentially trying to do is ascertain as best we can at the local level what some of the unmet needs are for our sector. The goal being that if we can't handle it at the local level, we can't fill that void, then we push it up to the region and to the state and maybe beyond to help get those resources. That's kind of the goal of what we're doing here, at least at the onset. So without trying to put you on the spot, I mean, are there other things in the rural / farmer / agricultural sector that you reside in that come to mind that you think are not currently being met, specifically around this COVID-19 crisis?
I have to say, I think that while it's terrible for the whole world, COVID-19 has really made people look at where their food comes from. So it's made us be busier than ever, and I think that's a challenge because our labor load is somewhat different now, especially if we're selling retail. At farmers markets, there's a whole different setup that is required. You can't touch anything like you can at the grocery store. So several extra people are required at the markets to be able to do that. There's a few vegetable farmers in our town. There's not many of us. A lot of the dairy guys and the hay growers, they're not experiencing that because they're not doing direct to consumer. But we're taking an extra 2 to 3 people per market with us. So that's an extra 2 to 3 people times 5 or 6 hours. So certainly our payroll costs have increased. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I will reach out to all of the guys that I know, the Hannons and Ben Platt and the Mitchells, and see if they're experiencing anything that we're not. We utilize mostly college labor. So unfortunately, all the colleges have gone back. I don't know how long they'll stay, but,
Right.
This week, most of our help has gone back. So that's the only thing that I would say is on our end, it's been a large increase of labor to be able to meet the Department of Ag regulations to continue to sell retail.
So those two things I think are something that right at the onset we can try to help get the word out. One is if you could consolidate sort of a pitch of what you could use or your sector could use labor-wise, let me know, because just like I do with any kind of job opportunities, trying to let the community know that there are job opportunities out there. We'll do that, and we can do that through this group's communications as well as my own. And similar, Neil, I'm still pushing to get the volunteer information for the flu clinics that you mentioned to me, because that's, you know, as we get into, besides the flu season shots, but then also getting, you know, anticipating that we're at some point going to have a vaccination. A similar kind of volunteer structure is probably going to be required on your end, right?
Yeah, we're recruiting volunteers, medical and non-medical. We're looking at 30 to 54 flu clinics with social distancing.
Wow.
It's a massive effort.
All right, I don't want to keep everybody. We said we keep this to a concise half hour. I'll send out to everyone a little recap of what we did here today. And we'll plan on doing this again next week at noon. I'll again ask everybody who hasn't already to reach out to their prospective networks and see if we can just start to gain some intel, and then figure out how to utilize that intel to gain resources that we might not have. So if anybody, unless anybody has any final words that they wanted to chime in, we will end here. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.